Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Paul Grand. I'm the CEO of MedTech Innovator. Very excited to have you join us today for this webinar. This is an informational session to learn all about MedTech Innovator 2020, both the US program and our Asia Pacific program, as well as some of the specifics about applying to the program and what the benefits are of the program in general. At the end of an intro that I'm going to give, which is going to take about half this time, I'll open it up for questions. For anyone who's on this webinar, if you're using the Zoom client, at the bottom of the screen, there's a little bar that has a number of options, or maybe it's on the side of your screen, depending on which client you're using. But specifically, there are a couple things that you can use to chat with me. One of them is a chat button. So if you hit chat, that will open up a little dialogue that you can chat with me directly. Secondly, there's a Q&A button. You can click that. That will give you the ability to queue up a question for me. If you have questions, that's probably the best way as we go for you to give me your questions. All you'll have to do is click the little Q&A button, type in your question. It'll get queued up for me, and then I'll answer your questions. There's also an opportunity to raise your hand. So you just click a little button that will give you the ability to ask me a question as well. But that'll just tell me that you want me to kind of address something midway. But if you do have a question, the easiest thing to do is for you to queue that up by putting it into the Q&A box. You're welcome to chat as well too if there's any problems or anything else. So with that, let me get started and tell you a little bit about MedTech Innovator, give you a little bit of our history and why we are here today. The reason we do these informational webinars is to basically give you a chance to kind of understand what the opportunity is at MedTech Innovator, understand how the application process works, and of course, answer questions. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run through some quick slides to give you a little bit of an orientation on MedTech Innovator, what we do, why we're doing this, and what you have to look ahead of you in this process. Then I'll get into the application and show you how that works. So to begin with, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and then I'm gonna switch over to PowerPoint, so stand by for that. So hopefully everybody can see my PowerPoint slides. If anyone's having any trouble, please let me know in the chat box if there's any trouble seeing the slides. But hopefully you're seeing a slide right now that says MedTech Innovator 2020 webinar. If you're not seeing that, please give me a comment in the chat box or something else. I'm going to go ahead and quickly talk to you about MedTech Innovator. So MedTech Innovator is first and foremost a nonprofit. The important thing you need to know about that is that we were set up specifically by the industry to find transformative technologies all over the world. We didn't really care in particular where those technologies are located. We wanted to make sure that when we find transformative innovations that they actually reach patients. And what I mean by that is that on a regional basis, every ecosystem, whether you're in San Francisco, Singapore, or Kansas, it doesn't really seem to matter. Everyone has the same issues, which is they've got great resources for getting off the ground, whether it's universities, seed funding, angel funding, and so on. They've got some people that might know a little bit about the business who can help them out. And they kind of get off the ground, they get going, they get a team, they get to work on a product, but then they kind of have difficulty getting past that. And what we found is that there are amazing companies out there that are not getting the funding and the guidance that they need to actually reach the market. What you see here on the slide is the graduating class of last year, but behind them, up on the screen, are products. And the products that you see on the screen are all products that are brought to market by MedTech Innovator alumni. So the key there is that we are bringing innovation actually to patients. We're not just coming up with ideas at MedTech Innovator, we are actually bringing products to market. So that's what this is all about. As I mentioned, it is an industry initiative, which you'll learn more about in a moment. Also, the other thing important to know is that we're looking specifically for medical device, digital health, and diagnostic technologies. If you're a pure play pharma, drug, small molecule, this is probably not the program for you. However, if you have a delivery technology for pharmaceuticals, if you have a remote patient monitoring technology that might help deliver technologies or might deliver care to patients who are on pharmaceuticals, you may want to apply to MedTech Innovator. So what you see here on the screen is a little bit about our history. We've been doing this now for 7 years. This is our 8th year. And we were trying to come up with a solution to fill this void in connecting MedTech innovators with the people who know how to bring their products to market, and ultimately improving outcomes for companies and improving outcomes for patients. And in the course of doing that, we put over 3,200 innovators on the radar of interested parties. And by that, I mean investors, the strategics in our space, and other stakeholders such as payers and providers in our industry who need to know about you. That's what this program is about. We've got a proven framework that really works. You're looking at the 2 graduating classes from 2019. We have 2 parallel programs, one in the US, one in Asia Pacific. So the one you're looking at here on the screen, these are both the top photo is our US class, which were 50 companies last year. And at the bottom is our Asia Pacific program, which were 20 companies last year. So we have just started in Asia Pacific in 2019. 2020 is the first year we'll be launching a full accelerator as well. More to come about that. So some of the numbers that you might find interesting. So as I said, this is our 8th year in operation. We have 258 alumni, 238 from our US program, 20 from Asia Pacific. We've graduated 6 cohorts from our accelerator, actually 5 cohorts in the US, 1 showcase cohort in Asia Pacific. We've got 39 products in the market, $1.4 billion in follow-on funding for MedTech Innovator alumni, which I think you'll find will outperform anything else you'll find out there in the world. And additionally, we've had 9 acquisitions. That's really important. Our alumni have gone on to do a number of amazing things. We have 50 products that have now been approved by regulatory agencies. As I mentioned, we have 39 of them actually in sales right now. We've given out over $3 million to winners of MedTech Innovator. That's all non-dilutive funding. We've given out 13 incubator awards, so that's space to find a place to work, which is very important. And then additionally, our alumni continue to raise capital every year. The thing that's really important to that for you is that you have access to a peer group of people who are very high performing. And even though you may be located in one particular ecosystem, and perhaps you've tapped out the investors there, as you go on and you move on to MedTech Innovator, now you're connected with innovators all over the world who, just like you, are looking to make a dent on healthcare and make an improvement in the lives of patients. They have access to investors that they can introduce you to, and so on. So you'll learn a lot about that as we go. One of the people attending asked a question about whether or not the recording will be shared after the webinar, and the answer is yes. We'll be sharing the recording after this webinar. All right, so moving on. MedTech Innovator is first and foremost a vast network of resources and stakeholders. This is just a tiny snapshot of some of the people who are involved in our program. We have people who are manufacturers who are part of the program, companies like Johnson & Johnson, Baxter, Hoya, Nipro, Olympus, Gore, Maxim, BTG, Asahi, Intech, Nipro, Jabil. There are many, many more. So we have manufacturers who are part of the program. We also have government agencies that are part of the program. Government agencies like the NIH, Barda, which is part of HHS, and their Drive program for advancing health security innovation, MedTech, which works with DoD and the US military. The FDA is part of the program for our pediatric innovation, and so on. So we have government agencies as well here in the US. Same thing internationally as well. We have government representation in other ecosystems. On the media side, we have a number of media publications that help get the word out about you, our startups. We are involved with payers and providers as reviewers, as judges, etc. At a number of the leading institutions. We have service providers and consultants who help bring products to market. The important thing there is that we don't just use MedTech Innovator vehicle to sell you things. There's no fee to apply to MedTech Innovator. There's no cost to you to be in the program. We don't charge you anything or take even equity for you to participate. We just want to see your products get to market. Our nonprofit funding covers that. We have stakeholders, however, who, even though they're service providers, they want to see the same thing. They want to see successful products get to market. And so we have a number of them, companies like Edge One, Zymedica, Alira Health, Proxima, Greenlight Guru, Medmark, Westwood and Wilshire, the Experian Group, Wilson Sonsini, and others who are there to help bring these technologies to market. They will provide mentoring completely free of charge during our program. Additionally, we have hundreds and hundreds of investors. You see just a snapshot of some on the slide. We will be introducing them to you during the program. You'll be pitching them during the program, and you'll be connected with them throughout the program. So it's a great opportunity to connect with investors, get on their radar, and then ultimately we have many, many other partners in local ecosystems as well. We're also an accelerator for the Barda Drive network. So if you're involved in health security innovation, which means you're developing something that might keep people healthy in the face of an attack, perhaps from biohazards or a plague or something else of that nature, whether it's diagnostic or whether it's treatment, we want to know about you. So if you're interested in that area, we encourage you to apply. We're looking for companies in that space. You can learn more about that on the MedTech Innovator website at medtechinnovator.org/interests. Interests plural. That will tell you about the interests that we're pursuing. You can also go to the Barda Drive website to learn more about that. What we're trying to do here at MedTech Innovator is support high quality early and later stage startups. So that without going into all the details in the slide, what I'll tell you is that we're trying to provide resources for companies that are not geographically bound. In other words, we want to bring the world's best ecosystem to the world's best startups. And that means we're not going to ask you to relocate, to move to Los Angeles where we're based. We want you to stay where you are. We're going to bring you out for a couple of very key events and connect you with a lot of people in person. But for the most part, you are going to be staying where you are, continuing to work on your products. We're looking for two groups of companies, early stage and later stage. The early stage, generally by that, we mean companies that are raising a seed round, a Series A round. And then the later stage, mid-stage companies tend to be companies that are raising a large Series B or have already closed one or even beyond. We generally support companies up to the Series C stage. We have 25 companies in our early stage, 25 in our mid-stage cohort in the US. In Asia Pacific, we have 20 companies in total. And some of the resources you'll see here on the slide, I talk about them and I will talk about them more in detail as we go. But the important thing is that key components are mentorship and introductions, a virtual curriculum that runs throughout our program that's customized for you. So we don't just do the same topics every year. We survey all of our companies and we say, here's all the possible topics. What are the ones that are most important to you? And then we assemble panels based on that of experts who then answer your questions. And that's something that we run throughout the entire course of our program. And all the participation completely can be remote. The other thing that I mentioned before that's really important is providing visibility. So it's not just at some of the meetings during our program, but it's also at key conferences. We'll talk more about them, but you get to get in front of the industry leaders at some of the largest healthcare conferences in North America and Asia Pacific and Europe. That's what we're trying to do, is put you on people's radar. And I can tell you that getting on the radar is half the battle. I personally was a venture capitalist for 12 years. And one of the biggest things that we saw is that companies may be developing their product somewhat in stealth mode sometimes. And then you'll have a wave of acquisitions in the industry where all of a sudden a number of the players out there will start moving on a particular segment because usually somebody makes an acquisition and then everybody else wants to make sure they have a company in that space. Depending on how far you are down the road with those various companies, the strategics, will determine whether or not you're actually going to get acquired in that kind of a scenario. Same thing happens with investors. People want to make investments in a space, and as soon as the hot company gets swept up, everyone's looking for the other players in the space. If you're not on their radar, you're going to miss out on that wave, and then everyone makes their bets, and it's too late, and now you're stuck. So we want to get you on people's radar. Just applying gets you on people's radar. Even if we don't put you into the program, just apply and get you on the radar of investors and the strategics because they all review the applications in our program. So we'll talk more about the resources that are available during our program now. There's 3 different components for our cohorts. This is extremely important because there are different cohorts. So I've put a slide here to kind of just give you the basic highlights. As you'll see, most of the things are common across these 3 boxes. On the left-hand side, we have our accelerator program. As I said, that's for earlier stage startups. We have a US accelerator and an Asia Pacific accelerator, two totally separate programs that you have to apply for separately. We generally say, if you're interested in the US market, you should apply for our US program. So you might be a European company, you might be an Israeli company, you might be a Israeli company and so on. You could be from Australia, you could be from Asia Pacific. If you're interested in the US as your primary market, then you'll probably want to make sure that you apply to our US program. If you are interested in our Asia Pacific market, if you're saying I want to deploy first in India, in China, in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and so on, Tokyo, Japan, whatever you're trying to target as your initial market. If that's Asia Pacific, you should apply for our Asia Pacific program. The differences, again, as you'll see, there's only a couple differences if you were to look at the slide. This is also in the FAQs, I think, on our website. But the main things are that everybody gets a peer network, and not just a local peer network, but you get a peer network across our entire program. Secondly, you get access to a virtual curriculum that I mentioned before. So the virtual curriculum is a series of webinars kind of like this, except there's a lot more discussion from not just me, but a whole bunch of panelists. Also, we have visibility at conferences. I mentioned intros to investors and others already, but the visibility at the conferences is very important. In our US program, that will be at the Wilson Sonsini Annual Medical Device Conference, which is in June in San Francisco, and the MedTech Conference, which is in Toronto in October. Those are our two big conferences in the US. If you're in Ireland, pitching us at our Dublin, Ireland conference, that's the MedTech Strategist Conference, which is an amazing conference for investors in Europe, but also it attracts people from all across Europe, Asia, and Israel as well. So that's an amazing conference. You get visibility there if you're pitching there. If you're an Asia Pacific program, the places that you'll be pitching are mainly the Asia Pacific MedTech Forum, which is run by APAC Med. That will be in Singapore this September. In the US program, there's also a MedTech Innovator Summit, which is in June in San Francisco. In Asia Pacific, we don't have a summit this year. We will in 2021. We also give out non-dilutive awards in our Asia Pacific program. That's $300,000. In the US, that's $500,000 in prizes. It says up to $500,000 or up to $300,000 because depending on which competitions you win along the way, you could win the whole thing if you won every single one of them, or you'll win some piece of that. First prize in the US program overall for the overall winner is $350,000, and there are other awards as well. There's also access to incubator spaces and in-kind services as awards and corporate mentorship. So that's all the Asia Pacific and US Accelerator program. For our showcase pool, those are companies that are the mid-stage companies. You basically get all the same resources that I talked about a moment ago. The only difference is that there's also a best video award that you're eligible for, and there is not corporate mentorship in the same way that you'd have in the accelerator. That said, you still have access to our corporate partners. You can still engage with them. It just means you probably won't talk to them every other week, which is what you will be doing if you're part of the accelerator. And then lastly, there's a pediatric track. So there's already been questions asked about the pediatric track. So there's the pediatric track is part of our accelerator in the US. You have all the same resources that I mentioned earlier in terms of the peer network and visibility. The big difference is that you'll be part of two pitch events, one in Washington, DC, that will be this March. That'll be on in March 24th. And then secondarily, there's also March 23rd and 24th are two pitch events in DC, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then secondly, you'll be presenting in a competition at the MedTech conference in Toronto in October. And in between, you'll be part of a pediatric accelerator track. You'll have a cohort of companies in that track. There'll be 10 companies. And then additionally, you'll be eligible for the competition that will give away $250,000 in prizes, $50,000 each. So there will be five $50,000 prizes will be awarded for pediatric innovation. And the mentorship in the pediatric track will be from pediatric related technology companies or corporates in the space, as well as others such as the NCC PDI, which stands for the National Capital Consortium for Pediatric Device Innovation. The NCC PDI mentors will be involved as well. It'll be pediatric oriented. Lastly, I'll mention that there is a military pitch, which is a subset of our overall program. All of the companies who are applying for the military pitch opportunity will also be eligible for our overall program, so we don't have a separate military track per se. However, if you have checked off in your application, or you do check off the box in your application where it says challenges, special challenges, one of those is a military, you have a technology for the military. If you check that box, we'll be contacting you about a military pitch event, which will be February 19th in Chicago. We'll have representatives of the military who will be there as judges, and it'll be a great opportunity to meet with them. If your company, there's a question someone asked, if our company has already submitted for a DoD grant, do we still qualify for MedTech Innovator? The answer is yes. There are no previous grants that will disqualify you from receiving funding from MedTech Innovator, so apply, even if you've had other grants. One of the other questions that someone asked was, do all the accelerator companies receive financial support? The answer to that is that not all of the companies will get an award. So this is not an accelerator where we give everybody $50,000 or everybody $100,000. What we're doing is giving you a huge amount of mentorship and access to resources that will help you bring your product to patients. We're also giving you a huge amount of access to investors. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for capital. And then the awards that we give out are merit-based. So they are in competitions, which is a very important distinction. So when you go into our program, we will have at least 3, if not 4 competitions this year where you'll be in front of an industry audience. We'll be selecting companies to pitch on that stage that are subsets of our overall cohort, usually 4 to 5 companies at a time. We have one competition related to value propositions. So we pick companies with the most compelling value propositions. We have another competition for the best executing companies. So we'll pick 5 of the top companies in terms of execution during our program. The last one will be our finals. That's the big shebang at the end. And again, we'll pick companies that overall have all the right things that we think to be successful. So that's a really important part of the program. Those are the people who get access to the cash awards. The audience is the one who chooses the winner. So it's just like American Idol. We let the audience pick the winner, but we're the ones who, with our mentors and with the corporate partners, choose the companies that are eligible for each competition. One other question someone had about the military pitch day, which I'll answer live now too, which is that the question was, is the military pitch day only military? And do you have to attend that day to be judged if you're a dual candidate for the military and the main program? The answer is that you generally need to attend that day if you're interested in the military program, and mainly because that's when the military reviewers will be there. If you were to present in one of our other cities, we will be recording those videos and we will make those available to the military. You just won't have a chance to meet with those representatives. So if you want to meet with representatives from the military, and by meeting, I don't mean just pitching, but actually having time to sit down with them, you'll want to be at the February 19th military day. But as I said, if you can't, in any event, we'll still make sure they're aware of your technology. But that's an important question. Thank you for asking that. Okay, so let me move on. Some of the key program dates. So right now, we've already had our applications open since the end of October, and reviews have begun of those applications. And the reason I say reviews have begun is because our first pitch events are coming up next month, and we're starting to go through and choose the companies that are going to pitch at that event in Chicago. So we want to make sure you get your application in soon, even though February 1st is the official deadline for general public applications. We want to make sure that we're getting these applications in as soon as you can. Don't wait till February 1st, because if you were, for example, interested in pitching in Chicago, by February 1st, we'll have made those decisions. And that doesn't mean you can't pitch. It just means we're probably going to redirect you to somewhere else. So you might, for example, get moved to pitch in Washington, D.C., or we might say you've been selected to pitch in Montreal, Canada, or perhaps you've been selected to pitch in Los Angeles, and so on. So if you can't pitch in one event, we always reconsider you for the other locations. The important thing for us and for you to understand about how we choose companies to pitch in locations isn't just based on where you're based. So for example, you might be based in Chicago, and we might say, we'd like you to pitch us in DC. And you might say, but I could just drive down the street and pitch in Chicago. Why do I want to fly to DC? Well, the answer for that is that if we've chosen you to pitch in DC, it's because the people who've told us they're interested in you are going to be in DC. Generally speaking, all of our corporate partners will be in all of our locations. We'll have representatives from each of them. However, there are occasions where one of them says, look, I'm really interested in that company. I can't make it to Chicago. I'm going to be in DC. Can you see if they can pitch us in DC? And believe me, it'll be worth your while. So that's how the locations work. In May, we're going to choose the companies that will be selected for our 2 cohorts. There will be a selection committee meeting where all of our partners will get together in one place. We'll have narrowed down the pool of applicants. We'll put them all up on the wall for the ones that we're still considering. And then our corporate partners, the companies like Johnson & Johnson and Baxter and Olympus and so on, they are the ones who are championing the companies. So you'll have a vice president of business development sitting in the room from one of those companies, for example, and they'll be saying something like, I love that company, I love the technology, I love the team, we've got to have them in the program. That's what you want. You want champions from those strategics. So they're the ones who get to choose ultimately which companies make it into the program, which is why they need to see all of you pitch in person if you're going to be eligible for our program. Now that said, I'll get into the pitch events in a moment. You have many opportunities to engage with people throughout our program. That in-person selection committee is just the one that finally chooses the companies in the cohort, but we'll have had deliberations and discussions amongst our strategic partners at every one of those pitch events where we'll all be talking about the companies that have just pitched. So more to come about that. The other key dates coming up over here are the big conferences. So I mentioned the June Wilson Sonsini Medical Device Conference in San Francisco, our program that runs June through September in the US cohort and in the Asia Pacific cohort for the most part. And then in October, we'll have the final conferences where we'll have our showcase and our finals. The important thing about the finals for us, so most accelerators are regionally based. They have a demo day in whatever city they're based in, and whoever happens to be in that ecosystem is who comes to that event, and you have occasionally some people who fly in from out of town. At MedTech Innovator, our finals are the largest conference in the entire MedTech industry. The MedTech conference, which is AdvaMed's conference, where the senior leadership, the CEOs and their leadership teams from every single major MedTech company will be at that conference. That's who you want to pitch to. That's where our demo day is, if you will. So that's where we showcase you in Asia Pacific. It's at the Asia Pacific MedTech Forum, which is APAC Med's conference in Singapore. That'll be in September. So it's not up here on the slide, but that'll be in September. Again, that's the senior leadership of the companies all across Asia Pacific will all be in Singapore on that date. So let me move ahead. One other question that somebody asked is whether or not we have different weighting if an application is early. So the answer to that is that we give priority reviews to applications if they come in early. We also give priority reviews to applications if they're referred by one of our partners. So if you've gotten an email from someone nominating you for MedTech Innovator, or if they've just sent you a link with a special URL at the end, those are all given priority reviews, which means we delegate those to reviewers as soon as possible, and we make sure they get reviewed first. And if you're in the queue now as just a general applicant, no one's referred you, you'll also get that same priority review. So you want to get your applications in as soon as you can, because it will affect your ability to get selected for the upcoming pitch events. If you apply on the very last possible date, if you submit it at midnight on the 1st of February, we will still review your application. It'll still get considered for events. It just means that your likelihood of getting selected for Chicago is very, very slim unless the slot opens up at the last minute. And then secondarily, our Los Angeles pitch event, which is our West Coast event, will be on March 2nd. And if you're applying on February 1st, that's really the last day to apply for us to consider you for that event. So that's why you want to apply early. All right, so on the screen over here now are some of the key dates. I mentioned some of these before. You can just kind of visually look at this right now. We'll have a recording of this later so you can see these slides as well. But just to give you a general flow, again, you'll see the events. So February in Chicago, Los Angeles in March. Our East Coast will be in Washington, D.C. on the 23rd and 24th. We'll have our event in Montreal in Canada on April 2nd. That's to be confirmed, but it is looking like it's 99% April 2nd. And then our international companies for the US program, whether you're from Israel or from anywhere in Europe, will be in Dublin, Ireland. That's on April 20th. That also is followed by a conference. So the same thing goes for our Los Angeles event. What's really nice is if you come to our Los Angeles event to pitch there, in addition to pitching all of the corporates, strategics and investors and providers who will be there, the next day is the UCLA Medical Device Conference, and you can actually go to that conference and be part of it and meet with other people on the second day. In Dublin, Ireland on April 20th, we have our day where we'll be at Trinity College where you'll be pitching there. And then the following several days is the MedTech Strategist Conference, which is one of the best attended investor conferences in the world for MedTech. It's a conference that we go to every single year and never miss. That's when you definitely want to be at. So in addition to being part of our Dublin Pitch Day, you'll also have the opportunity at a very highly reduced rate to go be part of that conference, which is an expensive conference. So it's certainly impactful to get that discount. One of the questions that someone just asked was how often companies get the opportunity to pitch. So during this road tour, you get to pitch one time at each of these, at one of these events. So, we'll select you to pitch at one of these events. The key thing to know is that we record the presentations for each of you so that if somebody was not able to attend from one of our investors or others that event and they want to see your presentation, we'll still have that recorded in our reviewer portal and they still have access to that later. So you get to pitch at one time at one of these events, but the pitching, I should clarify, at these events is not like a typical pitch event. These pitch events, you can see some pictures over on the right-hand side of the slide. These pitch events, you see round tables as well as a stage in front of the room. What we do is we have each of the companies get up first in front of the whole group of judges. So we'll have anywhere from 45 to 60 judges at each event. We don't just have like 3 judges sitting at the front of the room. We have 60 judges in the audience. It's only judges. It's not an open forum. The judges are our strategic investors, providers, and payers in some cases. We'll sit at those round tables that you see in the picture, and you will move around throughout the event, and we will assign you to judges who are specifically interested in you. So again, very different than any other pitch event you've probably been to if you've participated in one already. You're not just pitching to a room of people. Generally, maybe 1 or 2 people in the room are interested in your particular technology. At MedTech Innovator, you're going to get to meet with as many as 6 different judging groups of 5 to 6 people, each of whom has told us they're interested in your company. So you're going to get to meet with investors, strategics, providers, and others who specifically told us they wanted to meet with you. So it's a very highly targeted audience for you. Somebody asked the question about how many companies get to pitch. It's average of 30 companies per pitch event. So we will have, as you can see, in our main program, we'll have 5 different locations, but 2 of those are multi-day. So we'll have 7 days of 30 companies, which would be, if my math is correct, 210 companies that will be pitching us during this cycle in the US program. In Asia Pacific, the companies that we'll be presenting in Singapore, Shanghai, Tokyo, and Australia, as well as an opportunity to pitch online if you're unable to travel to any of those events. Same thing goes for our US program. If you can't make any of those locations for some reason, we do give people the opportunity to pitch us online. However, we highly encourage you to go to one of the in-person events because that's really where you have that interaction with the strategics and investors. So the Asia Pacific program, if you're applying for that, you see the dates down below in terms of where the events will be. February 25th in Singapore, March 17th in Shanghai, April 8th in Tokyo, May 19th in Melbourne. In Melbourne, that's right before the Oz MedTech conference. So if you were there pitching us, you would have the opportunity then to proceed on to that conference, which we are not affiliated with, but it's a nice opportunity to go to that conference as well. So if you're making a trip, it'll be worth your while. The grand finals for that program will be in Singapore on September 14th to 16th. So that's the overview of the dates. We ask you to block those out in your calendar if you think you're going to be pitching, hopefully, at one of those events. If we select you to pitch at one of those events, we want to make sure you're available. So please block those out on your calendars in the event that we do select you. We try to notify companies approximately 3 to 4 weeks in advance of each of these pitch events, so you can have a chance to book travel if necessary and block out the time. But again, I do suggest you put the date of the event you think you're going to be picked for and that you've selected in your application. So when we get into the application, you'll see that, that we give you the opportunity to choose your preferred pitch event. Okay, moving on from that. Some of the benefits of the program quickly. In the US program, there's a thing called the MedTech Innovator Summit. That's how we kick off our accelerator. It's where we bring all 50 of our companies in to one place, all from over the, wherever they're based, all over the world. They all fly to San Francisco and spend 3 days with us. 2 days at the MedTech Innovator specific conference, 1 day at the Wilson Sonsini Annual Medical Device Conference. All of that, there's no charge to you for doing that. You just have to pay for your travel. There's even a travel award for companies coming from internationally to the US program. If you're pitching us in Dublin, one of the companies there will receive a travel award to have all their travel covered as well. Interestingly then, if you look at the MedTech Summit, this is a series of workshops, panels, discussion, investor roundtables, opportunities to meet with payers and other stakeholders, but most importantly, it's to get a chance to meet all of us and for you to meet each other. Because as I mentioned, this peer group, our alumni, are the highest performing of any accelerator you'll find in the MedTech world. More of our companies go on to be successful, to raise additional capital and so on than you'll find anywhere else. So you want to know each other very well. The access to each other as peers really is the opportunity that I think is probably most highly valued by our alumni. When they reflect, they say, the best thing we got out of this was the peer group. So that's something that we love to provide. In Asia Pacific, as I mentioned, we won't have a summit this year. We will the following year, but you will still be meeting with other people locally. If you have, if there are local startups in your, if you're in Japan, for example, or if you are in Singapore, we will have opportunities for you to meet with other people during the program. We won't have all the companies coming together at the beginning. You will, however, all come together at the end of the program at that APAC Med Summit. Some of the other things to give you a sense of what's there. All the companies. There's also a showcase at the Wilson Sonsini Medical Device Conference. So every single company in our US program will present at the Wilson Sonsini Medical Device Conference to an audience that runs throughout the whole conference. Investors, strategics, and so on. So every one of you gets showcased at that conference. There's also a competition you see in the bottom right corner in front of the whole Wilson Sonsini audience for a $25,000 value award prize. All right, let me move on now. The next thing then is the finals and showcase. So in the US program, our finals and showcase I mentioned is at the MedTech Conference in Toronto at the beginning of the month, October 5th through 7th. That will be where all of our companies, after the program ends, will come back together and we'll have a chance again to be showcased. So all of our companies will be showcased on a special stage at the conference. We'll have a seminar where there are workshops, roundtables, partnering opportunities with investors, and so on. You'll have an opportunity to meet with just other CEOs in the business. So you'll see the picture on the bottom right, but there is a special CEO dinner and reception that's only for CEOs. So it's you, the companies in our cohort, as well as the CEOs of company like Johnson & Johnson and Baxter and Edwards and so on. It's just for CEOs, and it's a really great opportunity to mingle with other CEOs of small, medium, and large companies. That's something that you'll only find at MedTech Innovator. The only way to present at the Wilson Sonsini Conference or the MedTech Conference is in MedTech Innovator. So that's extremely important. In a similar way, we'll have a showcase at the APAC Med Forum, the Asia Pacific MedTech Forum in Singapore, which is in September. The only companies in our showcase will be the companies in the MedTech Innovator program. One of the questions someone just asked live that I'm going to answer real quick is that somebody asked, is it too late to get into the military pitch if you're submitting on February 1st? So the answer for that is most likely yes. The military are already reviewing applications. We're starting to notify companies in the coming weeks, which means by February 1st, we'll probably have selected most of the companies. There will definitely be a couple slots still remaining on February 1st. It always happens. We're looking for 30 companies in total. So, we might have 2 or 3, or could be even 5 slots still open out of the 30. And that's where if you've applied on February 1st, we'll be looking at your application. Just know that you're only going to have a couple weeks to make your travel plans if necessary to get to Chicago. But we'll certainly consider applications if there are still open slots. But as I've said a couple times, I encourage you to apply early. The application on average takes 20 to 30 minutes at most. If you've got a decent executive summary and those kinds of materials, you'll be doing a lot of copying and pasting, a little bit of writing, but for the most part, you should be able to knock this thing out pretty quickly. We encourage you to apply now. Apply this weekend, apply next week, because you'll get in front of the people who are making decisions. So that's the answer to that question. But of course, as I said, you'll still have an opportunity to be reviewed even if you apply on February 1st. For Asia Pacific, this is a quick preview again of the finals there and the showcase in the Asia Pacific MedTech Forum. So what you're seeing there is the finals up on the stage in the upper left-hand corner. So the judges in the finals are representatives, in this case, from Baxter, Boston Scientific, Johnson & Johnson, and Olympus. And if you look at the judges, you'll see they're asking questions or they're speaking. As I mentioned, even though they provide commentary and ask questions of our startups, ultimately the audience picks the winner in all these competitions. You'll see one of the winners of one of our awards on the right, Echo AI, a Singaporean company that, in addition to receiving one of our awards during the program, also received incubator space at J Labs. So that was one of our awards we gave out last year and we'll do again this year, which is a residency at J Labs, which are Johnson & Johnson's incubators. And then they also received a fast track to a competition called Switch, which happens in Singapore. So they basically were fast tracked into the finals, and out of thousands of companies, they wound up winning the entire thing. So in addition to our award, they won a second award not too much later after MedTech Innovator, but we really gave them the fast track to do that. You also see some images of our pitch events. So the bottom left-hand corner is a Tokyo pitch event that we did last year. You'll see the showcase opportunities at the conference. Additionally, in Singapore, as there will be in the MedTech conference, there's an opportunity for you to have a booth at the conference as well. In some events, those will be complimentary. Sometimes there'll be a small fee associated depending on the size of the booth and where you want that. But no matter what, everyone has the opportunity to pitch. Another question that was asked live was someone saying, who from the startup should be a representative in our virtual program? So I haven't talked too much about the accelerator. So we suggest that it's at least the CEO that's part of the accelerator program. But in most cases, people will send 2 or 3, sometimes 4 people to the MedTech Innovator Summit in the US program to be there, because this is an opportunity to meet with lots of people. So we want your team there. So we're happy to have 2 or 3 of you come to that. And usually it's people like the people in charge of the product. Sometimes it's people in charge of marketing. We do a lot of discussion and a lot of workshops on your value proposition. So making sure you have the right value proposition for the overall market. That's a big part of not just our summit, but also the overall accelerator program. Market access is not just about your initial indication. Market access is, how are you going to actually show with definitive evidence that your company offers value to the healthcare system, whichever healthcare system that is. And to each of the different stakeholders, it's not just the patient, there are lots of different stakeholders. So we'll do a lot of work with you on who all your stakeholders are, what the value is to each of them, quantifying that, and really refining your value proposition. And so we want to make sure the people who are participating are people who can speak to that, people who can answer questions. So if we say, well, why is this particular stakeholder not, why are you not considering them in the value equation? If you can't answer that question and you go, oh, well, that's one of the guys back in, Cleveland or wherever, then, it's not going to be as valuable for you. So, we want senior leadership at these events, but usually it's someone who's involved, CEO, marketing, product development, in some cases like a CTO kind of a person. But, a lot of startups are pretty small. And if you just have a 3-person team, we invite you all to come. All right, so moving on from that, applications are extremely competitive in MedTech Innovator. You can see the growth in the US program over our last cohorts. Our 2019 program had 818 applicants. This is not meant to discourage you. It's just meant to give you a visual on the fact that this is pretty competitive. But what's really important for you to keep in mind is that out of those 818 companies, we saw over 150 of them pitch us on the road. So that was a pretty high return in terms of being able to go out if you apply and actually getting to pitch investors and strategics. We had companies at those pitch events tell us that even though we didn't wind up selecting them to move on to the final program, the final cohort, they actually raised capital based on that pitch event. So they met with investors or they got value out of that event that led to them closing a financing round. And we hear those kinds of stories on a regular basis. So just making it to the pitch events alone is a huge value, even if you don't get selected to advance. We're expecting to have, I'm sure, as many applications as we did last year or even more. But again, the odds are still pretty good if you get selected for the pitch events, where we'll be seeing about 200 companies this year at our different events. That's about, let's say, 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 odds of getting selected for that. And if you make it to the pitch events, and we're choosing 50 companies for the cohort, your odds are, again, about 1 in 4 of making it to the program. So, pretty good odds. Definitely worth taking that shot. I also will mention that many of the companies that make into our program applied in previous years. You should know that our judges change every single year, our partners change every year, and their interests change every year. So that means that even though you might not have been a fit one year, you may be a fit the following year. So that's the end of this main presentation. I'm going to stop that share, and I'm going to switch over, again, to my application screen. So I just quickly show you what that looks like and walk you through that very quickly. I encourage you to keep asking questions in that little dialog box, because this is an opportunity to ask those questions, and we've got about 13 minutes left. If you are seeing my Chrome browser right now, you are looking at the MedTech Innovator homepage for, it says Member Home. So when you first come to MedTech Innovator, you sign into, you register for an account. It'll send you an email. You click on the link to reply to that and set up your password. Then it'll take you right to something called your MedTech Innovator profile. That looks something like this. So the first thing you'll fill out is something that looks like you see on the screen here. It asks for your contact information. We need a mobile number because we have to be able to text you to let you know what's happening, like you've been selected and other things. We ask where you're based. So this is the main location. If you have more than one office, that's just fine. Just give us your headquarters. This is for you personally. This is not for the company. We're asking where you personally are based. If it's your home office, you don't have to give us your home address. You can use the corporate headquarters. We also ask for your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter URL if you have one, or personal webpage, and we want a short bio. This is important because we share this with people. People on our selection committee want to know about you, and there's a number of places in the process where you can tell us about your team. In this particular case, we want just a short bio on you. It could be a paragraph. Tell us, why, a little bit about you. Again, you probably already have this already written. Don't rewrite it. If you've got something, paste it in there. Down at the bottom where it says community information, it says request to be an innovator, a mentor, and so on. You can choose request to be an innovator as yes, which means you're applying for a program. You don't even have to do that. You can just leave all these as no. This is really talking about the community, meaning that if you want to participate in our overall community. If you want to fill that out, that's just fine. The community meaning that that eventually we have something that you might consider to be kind of like a LinkedIn, if you want to think of it that way, for MedTech. So if you fill the information out here and put a short bio in here as well, that will be part of that community when that goes live. So that is another opportunity. You don't have to request to be a mentor or an application reviewer if you're applying to MedTech Innovator. So that's the innovator profile. And then after you fill that out, it'll take you right to your company information. So it'll go straight to this page, which looks a lot like the last one and sometimes confuses people. This is information about your company. So we want to know the name of the company, the year it was founded, your staff head counts. You'd say, we have 3 people on staff. If you have part-time staff, we'll ask you the same thing. No, I have 2 part-time staff. And again, main phone number, the website URL for your company. Again, a Twitter URL if it's not your personal handle now. We're asking for your company's handle. We also like you to provide, if you have one, an Angel List or a Crunchbase URL, because we do pull information in from those databases to supplement. If you have those, please paste those in. And then lastly, again, as I said, your headquarters for your company. So that's pretty important. You'll save that at the bottom of the screen. So once you've done that, it'll take you right into the main application. So it'll just keep flowing you through the process the very first time. If you come back later, you're allowed to save your application and come back at any time. this is the page that you'll see. So I'm showing you what this looks like. It says, welcome Jane from JCO. And it's showing you the graphic for the MedTech Innovator US Road Tour. If the application you fill out is for the Asia Pacific program, you'll see the graphic for the Asia Pacific program up here. If it's a pediatric application, then you will, I don't think you'll see any banner up here at the top. So that's the first thing you'll notice when you get to your homepage. We'd like you to also edit a photo, which basically means you just click this button and add a photo. So we are able to recognize you when you show up at our events. You can always come back at any time and update your profile for your company. We also encourage you to use this option to add employees. So if you click this button over here, you type in the email address, first name and last name of someone from your company. The specific reason for that is for help in this application process. So if you have a 2-person, 3-person team who's going to be involved in maybe contributing to the application, you want to add all of them to the application so that each of them will have access to the application in their own version of this page. They can all edit the same application and contribute to it without having to log into, all into some one user account. So you can each have your own account. It also means that when we send emails to notify you, congratulations, you've been selected to pitch in Chicago, it will go to all 3 of you so that in case one of you misses it, the rest of you still get that information. So that's very important. Now let me show you the application itself. So again, as I said, if you were starting a new application, this is what the screen looks like. So the very first screen says, welcome, let's get started. It gives you, it asks for the name of your product. So this is not necessarily the name of your company. It might be different, your product from your company, or it might be the same. Put that over here. So you can say like, new product, and put that information there, whatever it is. And then tell us which program you're applying to. And you can only choose one because we need you to create a separate application for each program. So if it's the US program, you click here, Asia Pacific here, pediatric there. Check off the I agree box, but please, of course, click the terms and conditions to read our terms and conditions before you hit I agree, and then hit save to proceed to the next page. There are 3 sections, the application, the files, and the review and submit option. So that's the overview. That's the first thing you'll do. And then once you actually start editing the application, you'll see it's depending on which application, there's 2 sections, a files tab, and a review and a submit button. It saves as you go. So I'm going to encourage you if I start changing this over here and I say my nifty, I'll change the name to my super nifty product. As soon as I click anywhere else, you'll see in the upper left-hand corner something saying saved. That means it just saved that change. You don't have to hit save at the very bottom of the page. Every change you make, this is my summary, will automatically be saved to the database as soon as you move to the next field or click somewhere else. So we ask you to fill this information out, a little brief summary, product name. That's the same name you entered on that last page. When you first got started, you can edit it here if you need to. Keep that short, so we don't want you to give us the whole name, a remote patient monitoring system that does blah, blah, blah. Tell us the name of your product. It's called Flight. It's called Aleve. It's called whatever. Just give us the name of the product. Short pitch over here. We want you to describe your product, application, and differentiation in no more than 100 characters. It's like a tweet, right? We want you to give us a very short description. That's because we have a master report, and there's a column that says short description, and our people are skimming through that, and we want to make sure they can quickly scan through that and say, oh, okay, it's a remote patient monitoring solution that uses laser beams, or remote patient monitoring, for cardiac outpatients, whatever it might be, just tell us what it is. And you can say, but maybe you want to differentiate so remote patient monitoring for cardiac outpatients, with 100 patients already studied. Whatever you want to say, just give us something that you go, oh, that's interesting. If you're scanning the list. Product development stage is pretty self-explanatory. Categorization is really important. And also, if you do have a product video URL, please paste it in that box. Product categorization is super important for us. So this is how we match you with the right reviewers. There's an overall category you can choose if you're a device, diagnostic, or digital. And you want to choose multiple boxes if you're more than one. So you might be a digital device, for example. The problem categories, so this is more generally like, we're a next generation surgical technology, that also is involved with clinical decision support, for example. Tell us generally, because again, thematically, there are some people who are looking for certain applications in certain areas. The special application categories, this is where, if you're interested in the military track, you click this box. If you're interested in pediatrics and you want to apply for the pediatric competition, which is its own separate standalone track, you want to also fill out a pediatric application. But if you're filling out a general application and you have a pediatric application for your technology, we want you to also check the box here. Hopefully that's not too confusing. Do fill out a separate pediatric application if you want to be considered for that track. Then over here, also, if this is a consumer health technology, click this box. If it's involved with geriatric and aging, click that, opioid epidemic, and so on. So if you're interested in the military pitch day, please do click there. Then you'll see a lead clinical category that are the same as on the left-hand side as all on the right. This is where you tell us your primary indication. So you may be applicable to 9 different clinical areas. Tell us the one that you think you're going to market with first. So you choose that on the left. On the right, tell us all the other ones that you may also be applicable to. That's very important for us. And then down below, these last categories are within device, diagnostic, and digital. It's a little subcategorization to tell us a little more about your technology. This is for 3D printing, this is implantable, and so on. For imaging, if you're diagnostic, tell us, are you a rapid diagnostic? Are you point of care, and so on. Digital, tell us if you're using blockchain or if you have sensors involved, and so on. Again, this is for us to match applications with the right reviewers. There's information then you'll see below that we ask about milestones and funding. We do need this information. People ask us all the time, do we have to tell you how much we've raised? Or, yes, you do. We need to know what resources you have available and what you can still accomplish with those resources, because if you are at the ideation stage and you say, hey, we're thinking about starting a company to do X, Y, Z, you're too early for MedTech Innovator. We want to know that you've got some resources, even if it's self-funding, even if you guys are just working for free. We want to know that, yes, we have 0 equity date, but we're working for free. You can see it down here, working for free. So, you could do that. And if you've raised 0 equity, put a 0 in the box. And so on. So tell us that. Milestones, it explains how to do this, but tell us the milestones you've accomplished as well as what's achievable with your resources, because again, we want to know if we're going to give you a lot of mentoring, what can you accomplish with your existing resources? Then following all that, we ask about upcoming milestones for fundraising. So you've already raised some money, or you already have, whatever your resources are. Your next round is going to be a Series A. So you would tell us, we're seeking, 1 million in our Series A, and you would check that off, and you'd say, we think we're going to close that on, 04, 2020. Tell us whatever your anticipated date is. Again, it's just to give us a sense of how soon you are to that next milestone, and then tell us what are your basic milestones that you can accomplish. We can, we're going to, generate, RCT, randomized control study, 100 patients in, Q2 2020, whatever it might be. Tell us what you think, your next milestones are, and you can just keep going. And then lastly, at the bottom of that, you'll see some referrals. Those are really important. If you're an NIH company, meaning you have received funding from the NIH, tell us and then give us the NIH grant number so we know that you've done that, and we can actually cross-reference that with the NIH. Tell us how you heard about MedTech Innovator. That is very important. I'll write it over there again. And then lastly, tell us if you've previously applied. If you have, give us the updates. Updates here since your last application. And then you tell us where you want to pitch. Do you want to pitch in the East Coast, Europe, pediatric, West Coast, etc.? And then tell us down here on the right, the other locations. If we don't choose you for your primary location, where else could you pitch? Oh, I could pitch in the central US, and I could also pitch in Europe. And then you hit the next button to proceed to the next section. That gives us some more questions about value propositions. That's where you're going to tell us, who your stakeholders are and uniquely what differentiates you. You'll see some of these have asterisks, not all of them do. We encourage you to fill out all the fields, but you have to focus on the ones certainly that have asterisks. The need and the problem, you want to tell us what you're solving. Your market access plan is very important to us. We want to know what market you're targeting first, so we can make sure you're in the right program, your competitive advantages, and your market advantage, or your first to market, and so on. And then lastly, tell us a little bit about your IP, the current, the status of your IP. Nothing confidential, please. Just give us the, the status. Tell us about your team, how you guys your team and your expertise. Again, you're probably just pasting from something you already have. The formation is something you might not have. So this is a little bit of give us a little more detail that are interesting about your team. We all met in high school and we've been working together ever since, whatever. We all worked together on a product at another company and then we spun out to do this. We ask you some questions about the stage of your regulatory approvals and submissions. And then if you've been in any other accelerators, competitions, tell us about those. If you have current relationships with other partners, that tell us about that. For example, we're doing a pilot with Kaiser Permanente. We ask if you're generating revenue and who your customers are and what your business model might be. And that's the end of the main application. And the last thing is the Files tab, which I'm going to show you. This is where you upload files to the application. If you have, we want you to give us at least your pitch deck. So all you have to do is you can drag it right on here, or you can hit select files and you'll get a standard dialog box to upload your file. It'll appear here when it's done. You can also click that to reload or at least to preview the file as we would see it. So you drag your files in here. This is where you can also put things like letters of support. Candidly, the most thing we're interested in is your pitch deck and information that gives us information about the product, the problem you're solving, etc. Non-confidential only. If you put anything confidential here, we will send you an email saying you uploaded something that says confidential on the slide. We will not look at it until you remove that. So if that's the case, you'll have to send us an email and say, hey, please delete my pitch deck. I just uploaded a new one and use that one. So you upload that here. And then lastly, you click review and submit, and you'll take into a screen that tells you the status of your application. So it'll say the application is either complete and ready to submit, or it'll say the application is incomplete because there's still some things that need to be filled in. And it will tell you what those things are. Oh, you left out the development stage and the grants to date. Again, things like grants to date means we want to zero in that box if you've had none. The milestones achievable weren't filled in and so on. And it tells you how to go back and complete that. Tells you what files were attached. And then if you scroll, you'll actually see your application. So you'll see the details about the application, that little working for free that I just entered over there, your upcoming funding and milestones, any referrals and so on. So anything that's blank you'll see is empty. You'll see the categories you chose, information about your company, your contact, and so on. So it'll all be on one page. You'll know that you filled everything in if you see it here. So that's the main meat of everything I wanted to show you. We're already at overtime, but I'll stay on for a couple minutes and answer questions. I don't have to go right away. So I'm going to quickly look through the questions that have been submitted. Please add them to the Q&A box if you haven't done so already. So one of the questions was that someone asked, if I saw programs for military pediatric, does one application cover all tracks? So in the case of military, if you fill out the main application and check the military box, then you're being considered for the military pitch. If you're interested in the pediatric NCC PDI, Pediatric Consortia, that program, the separate pediatric accelerator track, you will need to fill out the pediatric application. And if you're only interested in that, you only have to do that application. If you want to be considered on a dual basis for both the US and the pediatric tracks separately, fill out two separate applications. Once you go back to your member homepage, you'll see the application that you've added. You can always load that application, click on the add application button to apply for a second program. And so you can have two tabs open and just kind of copy and paste between the two. So that's the answer to that question. And the other question about pediatrics. Okay, other questions in the Q&A box. In terms of supporting materials, if we've already mentioned letters and support. Also, someone said we're very early in concept, don't have any IP and supporting documents yet. Is that a problem? That's fine. You can just say we haven't submitted yet to the, there's a question that asks about that. So you can just say haven't done that yet. Good question. Someone said, must we be a legal entity? The answer to that question is yes. We want you to be a legal entity to be in MedTech Innovator. That's very important to us. You don't have to be a legal entity to apply. So if you're still at a university, you have your team, you get your product, and you say, hey, if we enter this program, we're starting a company. We've had that happen now several times. It happened in Ireland, and it happened in our US program, where there was a company that was on the cusp of incorporating, and they said, look, this will be the thing that makes us do that. So they applied to the program. And we went through the whole process. Then we said, if you're going to get into the program, you need to be a company. In both cases, they formed the company just in time for MedTech Innovator. So you don't have to be a legal entity to apply. You do have to be a legal entity to be in the actual program. So that's very important, and it's fine for us if you haven't. In fact, we want to be the catalyst to make things happen. So that's very important. Other things, somebody asked hallmarks of successful applications, best practices. Good question. So very simply, I would just say we want transparency. We don't want you to sugarcoat things. We want you to tell us what your stage is. If there's a way somewhere in your application to say, here's why we're applying. We're really, really excited about this program because we're looking for access to people outside of our ecosystem, or we're really interested in applying because we really want to work with Baxter. Or you might tell us somewhere, we're really interested in this program because we're really interested in working with Johnson & Johnson, whatever that might be. Tell us that in the application. Or we're very interested because we only have one key opinion leader associated right now with the program. We're looking for introductions to new ones to expand our clinical sites and so on. So tell us why you want to be in MedTech Innovator. That's a good strategy. It's something that we're very interested in. We want to know why you want to be in this program. So those are some of the key things. Traction that's considered adequate for a seed round, somebody asked. Well, that maybe is a discussion for a longer time, but I would just say in general, in a MedTech space for a seed round, generally speaking, people need to have some level of product development done, and probably even, so whether it's, obviously a prototype, but some kind of level of development done. If it's a digital app, then, some kind of prototype that you can show people. And you probably need to have some kind of customers that can stand up and say, not necessarily paying customers, but somebody who might be a customer who can say, we really need this. So the most important thing I think I always tell people is don't develop something that's only a solution for you. If you're the clinician founder, don't just develop something that solves your problems. I want something that solves everybody's problems. Don't just solve something that's just for your neighborhood or your ecosystem, solve something for the world. So that's a best practice too. Think about, even though you may be the inventor and you have a cardiovascular practice, and so you say, well, we're going to start off in cardiovascular in this little niche area within cardiovascular, but really the big opportunity is this other one. That's probably not a good strategy. It might be good for you because you already have some funding or clout in that space, but the truth is, if the big market is what you need to be going after, that's where you need to launch your company. So, tell us, hey, I'm a specialist in cardiology, but I think this really is better. And, if it's, normally we specialize in the heart, but this is really better for neurovascular. And, we want to connect with people who can help us with that. Something like that as well. Also, one of the people asked, what's the link I can use to show the webinar to my team members? So if you come back to MedTech Innovator and go to medtechinnovator.org/apply, our apply page, this webinar will be at the bottom of that page. Also, someone said, I'm an existing company developing a new product. Can I apply? Absolutely. We want you to do that. We have those every single year. Someone has a really interesting product. They got a great team. They're doing something new. We want to know about it, and we want to help you get the technology to patients faster, better, etc. So yes, please definitely apply. You can tell us, this is my lead product. We have another product that's been successful or we've already developed, but this is now the new product that we're developing. That's what we want to hear about. Another question, for a device that's targeted towards kidney transplants, should the best category for lead clinical category be nephrology, as there's not transplant medicine category? Yes, nephrology. Please do that. Okay, last couple questions here. Someone said, it says, I'm the GC applying as the key person submitting, but I know the CEO will be the primary contact. Should I put his name as the primary contact, but I can still click the application? Yes. That is a great question. So what you want you to do is we want you to apply you can have ideally you have the CEO be the primary contact. However, if you're going to be the primary contact during the application phase, you can still keep yourself as the primary contact. List the CEO, use that add employee option to add the CEO so they're included in the loop in all of our emails. But we'll still be contacting you as the primary contact if you're afraid the CEO is not going to perhaps be responsive. So if you want to be the lead person, keep yourself as the primary contact during the application phase. Once we move on to that and we start selecting you in advance, there's a button that lets you change the primary contact, but you don't even have to do that later. You can just keep yourself as the primary contact, make sure the CEO is added as an employee. Very important. And then someone else says, when we go through, if multiple people, submit, work on the application, does only one person need to click that? Yeah, it's just one person needs to click the submit button. One other very important thing I will end here with is, even after you've filled out the application, you've submitted it, it doesn't go off into some magical separate queue in a PDF that you can no longer edit. The application is still live. We find that people will apply. You may have already applied, and then you'll come back and you go, oh no, this other thing just happened. We want to update our application. You can just go back to your member home, click the edit application button, update the application. That will be live in our reviewer portal for our reviewers to see. So if you have updates, even after submission, come back and make those updates. The reason that hitting submit button is important is that we know that you're at least ready for this application to go into the review queue. So that's really what that submit button is for. And then later on, if you need to make updates, you're free to do that. So I've answered all the questions. I think we've covered everything. If you want to go to MedTech Innovator's website, there's also a video on the program on the apply page. I encourage you watch. It's also on our homepage. There's a video that's a recap of last year. And in that, you'll hear some of our innovators talking about what they got out of the program, as well as some of our corporate partners. And I think it's really interesting to hear our corporate partners talking about what they get out of the program, because you'll see this is really important to them. It's not just they're sponsoring and they're writing us a check. The corporate partners are the ones who are mentoring you. They're the ones who are going to talk to you every other week, perhaps, or that you're going to have a chance to engage with if you're in our showcase program. So those are people that are really the most interested out of all the people in MedTech Innovator who are supporting us. It's our corporate partners who want to meet you and engage with you. So we're really excited that you're interested in applying, that you took the time to watch this webinar. If you have any other questions, email me, paul@medtechinnovator.org. You can also email support@medtechinnovator.org if you have questions about your application or the process. Support goes to multiple people and not just me. If you have something just for me, paul@medtechinnovator.org is just fine. Or if you have a general question, again, support@medtechinnovator.org. So I hope to see your application soon. Again, I encourage you to apply right away because we are reviewing applications now as we speak. If you have any other questions or anything else, please reach out. We answer questions all the time, happy to do it. And even with a huge volume of emails coming in, this is what we're doing. This is our entire job, nothing else. So thanks again for participating. I hope to meet you on the road this year, and I hope to at least see your application online. So thank you very much. And again, the recording will be available on our website for this webinar. Thanks again, and have a great day.